We on? All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming out to my presentation here for Cinema 4D in FMX in Germany. I am coming from Boston in the States, so for me, this is definitely a treat. I want to thank Maxon Germany for having me out here. Let's see. It's so great to talk to you guys, like-minded people in the industry. I always say, I've said it before, I've said it again, there's only so many polygon count conversations you can have with your girlfriend before you start to lose her. So this is definitely exciting for me. I love talking shop. We don't have a ton of time. Obviously, these things go pretty quickly, so I'm going to just jump right into it. The title of my presentation here is Leveraging 3D Techniques to Save Time and Resources. I was just at NAB for Maxon in Las Vegas back in the States last week, and I probably should have had a similar title for my presentation there because I do like to talk about saving time and resources. Those are two very big things for me as an artist, especially somebody that owns their own business, I'm sure for you guys as well. There's nothing like saving time for yourself as well as for your client. Saving time and resources not only affects the budget, keeps the budget in mind for the client, it also helps you out in the end in order to help schedule your timeline and keep everything going. So in order to break down this title, Leveraging 3D Techniques to Save Time and Resources, I brought this project with me that we just completed for Maxon Germany. It was a teaser, an animated teaser for the new Cineware 3 promo. And basically, the way that we wanted to save time and resources within the actual advertisement is showcasing the new take system. So if any of you guys have seen the new take system in Cinema 4D, or heard of it, maybe haven't had time to actually jump into it, definitely saves you time, saves you resources, and I'm going to definitely show you how to use that. Very exciting for me. Let's see, we're also going to go over camera compositions and focal length, basically a way to frame up your scene in order to not have to go ahead and model all this unnecessary geometry and things like that. So again, saving time on the back end. We're going to go over some MoGraph systems, how to kind of work around other applications that may be a little heavy during tight budgets and tight timelines. So going to show you kind of how you can, let's see, how you can save time that way with the MoGraph system and little workarounds. If we have time, I'd love to kind of go over keyframe animation, textures, render settings, things like that. But let's go ahead and get into it. I guess I am getting a little ahead of myself. I should probably introduce myself. My name is Jesse Vartanian. I also go by J Varta, as you saw by the first slide. And here's some sample work that I brought with me just to kind of show you a little bit about what I do. I was lucky enough to start at an ad agency and work on some really high-profile jobs like the HBO redesign back in the States, Travel Channel stuff, History Channel work, ESPN, NBC Sports, and the list goes on. And then like any artist likes to do, I think we kind of try to explore our own avenues here and see what we can do on our own. So I ended up starting a brand called J Varta a couple of years ago. And again, I've been lucky enough to continue those relationships with high-end clients like Major League Baseball, Under Armour, Yes Network, Bleacher Report, Maxon, and others. So here's a few samples of some behind-the-scene work for a few projects. And let me go ahead and just show you my reel so you kind of get an idea of the motion, and then we'll jump right into all the Cinema 4D stuff.
to your downtown.
All right. Thank you. I always get surprised when people clap after a reel because you never, as an artist, once the work is done, you kind of send it out and client sees it and that's it. So it's always nice. Thank you. Okay, so a few points that I had mentioned earlier we're going to go over for the Cineware 3 teaser. We're going to explore some concepts, style frames, and the brainstorming process, inspiration. I always think that that is one of the biggest parts, key parts to a project. We're also going to, again, explore the camera compositions, focal length, depth of field in order to help you save time and not model out a whole scene. Definitely going to go over the take system, both in Cinema 4D and After Effects. After Effects is a new update this past few months. And then we're definitely going to get into the MoGraph system and effectors and try to show you different workarounds that way. If we have time, again, I'll go into keyframe animation, render settings, multipasses, and textures. Now, let's just go ahead. I'm going to show you this promo, and then we'll kind of break it down and kind of show you exactly how we got to where we are. I'm glad somebody found some humor in that. So obviously, as you can see, that was really geared towards designers and animators and artists alike. I think we can all share that same sympathy where you're going down an avenue with a client and these changes come in. Sometimes they make sense, sometimes they don't. And more times than not, you end up back where you started. So that is actually where the initial conversation kicked off between myself and Maxon Germany. And they kind of came to me and wanted to do something just like that. The new take system was a new update in the Cineware 3.0 update in After Effects. And basically, the take system does help you save that time and energy during client changes, which I'm going to jump into. So that's pretty much where we started. How do we portray client changes during an animated promo? And we wanted to keep the text minimal, and just really hone in on the motion graphics piece and kind of break it down that way. So as you can see here, I brought some style frames with me, and this is basically what I pitched to Maxon Germany, and hopefully you can see within the promo that you just watched, it's pretty much kind of what you see, and these are style frames. And the reason for that is I tend to design in Cinema 4D. I think Cinema 4D allows you to really work pretty fast in production. And if you're, a freelance artist, or you work for yourself, or if you work for an ad agency, either way, I think it's important to set yourself up for success rather than for failure. And what I mean by that is I'm typically the one to animate things. I'll design it, but I will end up most likely animating and going through production. So when I say I like to set myself up for success, I mean if we build out all of these environments in 3D during the design phase, once it gets approved, you're taking a little bit of a risk, but once it gets approved, everything's all set up for you to jump into production, and that way you can focus on other areas of the production rather than struggling to build out all of these models and the scenes, etc. And also what I want to go over, I told you about inspiration. Inspiration is huge to me. I travel a lot. Obviously, I'm here in Germany, and I'm from the United States, so I definitely find inspiration no matter where I go, whether it's sitting in a coffee shop or in a safari in South Africa. Everything inspires my next work. Obviously, you're not seeing lions in here, but in a sense, you get to see the world and see things for what they are. So The kitchen scene here, as you can see, after we got off the phone, the concept, I started brainstorming a little bit. And, the sun was coming in the window, it was really nice lighting and everything, and inspiration struck. I had a soda can right on my kitchen table, and I knew that we needed to create a few different scenes in this kind of sense. So I ended up taking my iPhone and framing up the composition exactly how I saw the motion graphics piece in my mind. Took a photo of it, went into my office, and this is pretty much what you see. This is my kitchen. So there's inspiration for you right there, rather than going online and copying another idea that you may have seen and trying to elaborate on that. Also, this coffee shop. Coffee shops tend to be pretty cool, rustic, trendy, hipster, whatever. And again, I was sitting down at my local coffee shop downstairs, had my coffee cup, needed another scene, and I'm such a huge fan of wood and all that kind of stuff when I texture, so definitely took a photo of my coffee cup on the table, went upstairs, started modeling, and that is my local coffee shop. The futuristic scene, that's not like my bedroom or anything, so okay. And then just to kind of show you the inspiration, I thought this was pretty interesting looking back on the looking back on the project. You always want to kind of reflect on your work, and after the project was done, I kind of dug these up, and in retrospect, it's pretty interesting to see the relationship and how you were able to really mimic something real life, but from scratch in 3D. So let's see here. I'm a huge fan of behind the scenes work and breakdowns and all that kind of stuff. So I just kind of brought a few breakdowns here just to show you the 3D can with the label and the droplets coming down, because some of that stuff gets missed during a really fast piece. And here's some other, with the label off, just to kind of show you a little bit of the label design there. Okay, let's get into Cinema 4D and start doing some cool stuff here. Okay, so I brought the working file with me here, as you can see, and I turned off all the textures just so that everything can kind of move pretty smoothly. If I go ahead and go through here, see everything kind of animating in. The next scene comes in, and if I turn this camera off, there we go, you can kind of pivot around this can and really see everything happening here. There we go. So, and if we go a little bit further, you can kind of see the scale of this thing here. The reason why I built everything out in one scene was I really wanted the can to kind of stay in one position, have everything else moving. I thought that was kind of an interesting idea. So the can was always in one spot. The camera was always pretty much in one spot, and everything around this can was, flying in, flying out. Everything done in Cinema 4D. There we go. So let's get into the camera composition and why that's so important. And as you see here, the reason why I kind of turn the camera off and you can see the environment is the fact that I don't have much else going on in the scene, right? So if I go back into the working camera, pull out, I didn't bother modeling my entire kitchen. You don't see, the couch, you don't see the windows, you don't see all that kind of stuff, because I knew you wouldn't see it, right? Because you do an animatic, you figure out what's going to be in your composition. And if I did that, I would be way behind. Probably would never have even finished this project. I'd probably still be working on my kitchen, to be honest, because I know how artists are, and once you get into creating something from scratch, your mind can kind of take off. So definitely an interesting idea when you're talking about saving time and resources. So make sure you frame up your camera composition so that you're not doing any unnecessary modeling. Obviously, it would look really cool for your portfolio and stuff, but in terms of your client, they may not be super happy with that. Also, I wanted to go over focal length. Sometimes focal length gets forgotten about. So as you can see, I have about 26, 27 focal length here. And if we go ahead and right-click on these arrows, it goes back to 36. 36 is the default in your working camera in Cinema 4D. And also, if you right-click on any arrows within Cinema 4D, as you can see here, pretty much brings you back to the default. So that's kind of an interesting tip that helped me out a lot when I first found out about it. So we can go back to this focal length, right? And what's happening is basically, as you pull the focal length down, you're opening up your scene, so you're allowing more information in, and it's basically allowing your scene to become more dramatic, I suppose. So, you know, I can pull this back a little bit more here. Actually, let me go ahead and drop in another camera here so you can see. So if we zoom in on the can, and as I go down, right, so now I'm in the table, but if I pull this focal length back, it's pretty dramatic, right? We can zoom back into the can, and now the can is heroic, right? It's very, you know, we're looking up at it, everything seems so big. Obviously, you're going to need to model out a little bit more in your scene. I didn't go this dramatic, obviously, as you can see here, but let's see. Yeah, so if we go back to the default here, you know, it's basically just kind of flattening things out, and it's a standard camera there. So definitely check out the focal length if you haven't before. It can certainly add drama to your scene, and you know, yeah. So let's see. Okay, so now what I want to talk about is the new take system. And the take system allows you to basically save out different animations within your project. So say the client comes and says, you know, we want this can spinning from left to right off screen, really motion graphics-esque, and that's kind of what we're looking for. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to jump back into the working camera here, and this is the first scene, right? So it's spinning in, there we go. And what I'm going to do is go down to the soda can layer. I'm just going to delete all of these keyframes for the purpose of this demo. Okay, we can shrink the timeline down, perfect. And you see I have the condensation on as well, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. And textures are turned off, so if I go ahead and turn them on, you can kind of see some real-time textures in there, but again, it's certainly going to slow down the system a little bit, so that's another little tip there. If you go into options, and you can toggle on and off your textures, just so you can kind of focus on the animation. All right, so with the can layer selected, what I want to do is basically just address that client request, right? So I'm going to go ahead and drop in a keyframe at, say, frame 20. I'm just going to go ahead and slide this can right off. There we go. And I currently have keyframes turned on, so again, what you can do is you can just right-click, go into animation, go down to delete track, and it's basically going to delete all of the keyframes for all of your rotation, so you don't have to kind of go through the timeline and do that by hand, which is another nice little tip. So now I can go ahead and set the rotation to 0, and once we get to 20, just do like a 360-degree turn on it. That way it slides in. There we go. I'm a stickler for secondary animation, so I'm definitely going to have to throw in some secondary animation there. I watched the Peanuts movie on the way over here. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but man, that has some awesome principles of animation built in. Okay, cool. So this is horrible. I'm sorry. This is like really bad secondary animation, but I don't have time. Obviously, we would go into the timeline editor and mess with the curves and everything, but we address the client request, right? So it's flying in from left to right. There we go. Stops in. And what we're going to do is go ahead. There's this new tab here called Takes. So if we select Takes, we go up to here and hit New Take. There we go. So what I'm going to do is call this can animation 1. Okay. So we have one take here, And in order to apply this animation to that take, all we're going to do is go on into the soda can layer, which we applied the keyframes to. We'll right-click, and it's similar to the way you add layers, so I kind of have everything organized here in layers, and if we continue down, you have this new option called Take Assignment. You go ahead and hit Can Animation 1. So basically what we're doing is assigning these keyframes to take the Can Animation 1 take. Now what happens is the client may come back and say, you know what, I know we told you we want the can sliding in from left to right, but we want to try it, you know, slamming from off screen, hitting the table and all that good stuff. So, okay, rather than deleting this animation, just in case they do come back and say they want that again, we saved it as a take, and now we're going to go ahead and do that new animation. So let's see. What we can do is, on a Mac, you can hit Control, click, and you can drag it down and duplicate it that way, or we can just go ahead and hit this new take button here, and we'll name this Can Animation 2. Okay, so with the soda can selected again, go ahead and delete the keyframes here, and we'll make it slam in from off the screen. So set a keyframe at, say, 20. All right. We'll just assign it to Can Animation 2. Set a keyframe, go back to 0, and now we're going to drag it off. There we go. Slams into scene. Maybe we'll make it 15. And do that secondary animation again. Sorry, it's horrible secondary animation. But we got to do it. Okay, cool. So now we address that second client change, and we went ahead and assigned it to Can Animation 2 just by going into Soda Can, right-clicking, Take Assignment, and Can Animation 2. So if we go into our takes now, if we toggle to Can Animation 1, you should automatically see the keyframes jump on the timeline, and the animation kind of jumps as well. That's because now we can go ahead and play this through, and we have our original first animation, which is great because the client just came back and said, you know what, we actually do want that first animation. So we didn't lose it, right? It's in there. And the great thing about this, this setup, this workflow, this new take system, is the fact that it can work like this, but I think it could be great for brainstorming too, and doing motion tests for client projects. So if you have a new project coming up and you know, maybe you want to do 15, 20 different motion tests, you want to organize them all, stack them up, see what's working, see what's not, render them out, and continue workflow that way. So this is the take system within Cinema 4D, and they have also, within the new Cineware 3 update, they've integrated this option in After Effects. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and save this out, and we'll jump into After Effects, and I'm just going to quickly show you the option in there as well. Okay, so I'm going to jump into After Effects here, have this open. Now, if you guys have never used Cineware before, sometimes, you know, new updates and new features can be a little, I don't know, a little scary, I guess, to artists. You know, you're in your workflow, you're in work mode, you don't have time to look at new updates, new features, things like that. Cineware, it's easy. You know, all you have to do, I'll show you right now if you haven't used it yet. I'm going to double-click here and import my Cinema 4D project. You can also go to File and import your Cinema 4D project. And that's Cineware right there. Basically, Cineware allows you to open up a Cinema 4D project within After Effects and continue that linear workflow that way. So, you know, as if you were going to import footage or a PSD or an image or anything like that, you're importing your Cinema 4D file. And we have it right here. So what we can do is just click and drag this into a new composition, and we should see the first frame of our animation, which is great. So if I scroll through, all of the animation is actually coming in as well. And now one of the new updates within Cineware 3, which is the promo that we created to advertise this, is one is a new render option. So if you've used Cineware in the past, you know there's a final render setting, which is, you know, your final render setting. You have a draft setting and also a software preview, which is going to be your fastest. There's now this OpenGL, which is obviously going to utilize your GPU, and it's going to give you a much better preview, and it's still going to maintain that speed. So if we kind of go through, we're getting that nice preview as well. And obviously, I have my textures turned off in Cinema 4D, so if we jump back in here, I can turn them on. You have to save everything. Anytime you kind of work, you're jumping back and forth into After Effects, you want to save your project so that After Effects knows that you made a change. And there we go. It's going to load up and kind of show you the textures there. So let me see. So the take system, if we actually have takes assigned within Cinema 4D, which we do, we assign the 2 of them, this set take option is now enabled. You're now allowed to go in and click it. So if I do, we can kind of go through and see we have our main take, which is the main scene. And then we have our 2 can animations, one sliding from left to right, one dropping down. So let's see, if we go to can animation 1 and click OK, it's going to load up a little bit, and we can kind of slide through, and that's our first animation, which is perfect. If we go to can animation 2, click OK, it should jump a little bit. Obviously, we have the animation coming from the top, and there we go. And this is a great workflow because say you're already in the compositing stages and your client comes back and maybe they change their mind again and they say, we want that second animation actually. We don't have to disrupt our compositing workflow. We can continue the lighting and all this kind of stuff, and all we have to do is go ahead and change this take here and toggle through them. Definitely keeps you organized and allows you to save that time and resources in the back end. All right, so that's the new take system within Cinema 4D and After Effects. And now what I want to show you is how I kind of created the condensation on the can, which is kind of an interesting workflow here. Let's see. So we'll go to this kitchen scene. I'm going to turn the textures back off here. Okay. So if I turn the condensation on, there we go. This was kind of a big deal. A big part of the project was we needed to have this condensation because that kind of really brings out the high-end look of the motion graphics piece. Every time you see these soda cans spinning in and the Pepsi ads and all that kind of stuff, you can't really just apply a texture to it and get away with it. So I think geometry is important in order to see reflections and add in real-time updates such as that. So I did initially kind of want to use RealFlow. Obviously, the timeline for this project didn't really allow for it, and I don't actually think at the end of the day that would have been the best option. I think the way that we did it here was the best option for this project, especially the speed of it. So I actually ended up using the cloner object, and I'm sure you've used the cloner object. That's like the main thing in Cinema 4D, but I've also used the random effector and kind of used it in a different sense. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of turn off the condensation here, and I'll just zoom into the can a little bit. Okay, so condensation is kind of like a circle. I'm going to go ahead and add in some geometry here, a sphere. There we go. And I'm going to go up to MoGraph and select a cloner. On a Mac, if you hold down Option while you select cloner or anything pretty much in Cinema 4D, it's going to make your object a parent of it. So that's another little tip if you didn't know about it. And I'm going to go ahead. I don't actually want this animating, so let me delete these keyframes. Okay. And I'm going to resize the sphere there. So obviously, if you've used the cloner object, by default, it's set it to linear, which is going to make these linear balls, and we can go ahead and up the count on that. Another frequent one used is the radial option. So obviously, that's going to make it a circle there. We can up the count, up the radius, and the grid array is definitely great for particle effects and things like that. But what we wanted to do was apply these cloner objects to the surface of the can and kind of scatter it throughout. So sometimes, I'm not going to name names, but artists will will overlook this object option here and just kind of stick with the linear, radial, and grid array. And the reason for that is if you click object, nothing really happens. So that can kind of be a deterrent. Maybe you're just cycling through, nothing happens with object, and you move on. The way in which it will work is basically we want to apply the can to this cloner object. And you see here under object, that's basically where we're going to do it. So you can go ahead and drag in can into this object menu here. And it might load a little bit. It's currently the distribution is set to vertex, so the sphere is basically going to be applied to the vertices here in the can. And we have a bunch of different options. We have edge, polygon, center, surface, and volume. So if we hit volume, this could be kind of an interesting look. I can hide the can. And basically, it's mimicking the volume of the object. So this can be applied to kind of any scenario. And the count is at 50, so we can go ahead and crank this up. Obviously, it's going to chug a little bit, so what we can do is turn down the segments of the sphere, because we don't really need, that many. And also, when you're working with cloner objects, this is another little tip. If you hit render instances here, it's basically going to take, it's multiplying all of these, all of the geometry, but it's using instances of it. So it's not actually replicating all of the actual geometry, which means your scenes are going to run a lot smoother. So if you're ever working with a lot of cloner objects and you don't have render instances selected, your computer might just crash, which has happened to me before I learned about this render instance button. So another little quick tip there. But enough with the volume. Basically what we want to do is obviously hit the surface of this cloner object, which, if you can see already, it's making up the shape of the can. I'll turn it back on. How much time we have? All right. And let's see. Can turn this way down. Okay, perfect. So this is kind of what we want. I did two different variations. I worked with a large condensation and also a smaller one, just to kind of mix things up a little bit. And if we zoom in, it's definitely going to be a full sphere, so I tend to like to scale them down a little bit, flatten them out. There we go. And now with the cloner object, you can go into your MoGraph effectors and choose different ones. So random is definitely going to give us a little randomization here, but I'm going to turn off position and just work with the uniform scale here. That way we just have a little bit of variation there as well. So I can duplicate this if I want to name this, condensation 1. And if I go ahead and duplicate it, we can start messing with the spheres within it, make them a lot smaller, say 4, and we'll go ahead and up the count here. There we go. So now we have a little bit of a variation, that kind of sweating look to your can, and definitely a great little option if you don't have a ton of time, if you want to avoid other applications that may slow you down. Again, as an artist, there's 1,000 million different ways to do one thing, so there's no right or wrong way, I think. You kind of explore different options and see what works best for you. And in this current situation, I think this is what worked best for this project. And then we could go in and add, your material, your reflection, and work with the different multi-passes and everything like that. So that is the MoGraph effector. And let me go ahead and just play this teaser again for you, just so you kind of have it fresh in your mind. We have volume?
We have just a little bit sound in the stream. I was wondering if it's coming maybe from the power adapter.
right. So now you can kind of see, after we go over everything, what the final project was really like. So that's basically my presentation, leveraging 3D techniques to help save time and resources. Again, as you can see, all of these techniques really kind of benefit the client as well as yourself when you're working on a project. You always want to, again, be considerate of your client's budget, I think, as well as setting up yourself for success in the future. So again, I thank you guys for coming out and checking out this presentation here in Germany. All done. If you guys have any questions, you want to do questions? Yeah. Yes.
Thanks for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
What did you use to render it out in the end?
So in the end, that's a great question. To actually render everything out, I used the physical renderer built into Cinema 4D with a bunch of multipasses and composited everything in After Effects. I think you can certainly, explore different plugins as well, such as Octane or Arnold and those kind of things. But I think keeping it all in the same family, all within Cinema 4D, the physical renderer definitely was perfect for this job anyways. Yep. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions relating to this, or maybe just something else in terms of client changes or anything like that? All right.
Can you only put one animation in the take system, or?
So with the take system, you can certainly add in multiple animations, and that's why you want to go through and organize all of the different take layers, and that way you can, like I was saying, you can really explore different options for your motion, especially motion tests and things like that, so you can get 15, 20, as many different animations as you want. Yep. Mm-hmm. All right. Cool. Well, thank you guys again for coming out. I really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of your time here.